Hey, JB for Just TCG here, and today we'll be reviewing perhaps the most powerful theme deck that the Pokemon TCG has ever released. Yes, the Mach Strike Theme Deck came out with the release of Sun and Moon Ultra Prism, and I recently got my hands on it, and I can safely say, after about 40 ranked games online, this deck is nuts. Easily the best theme deck to be playing right now, especially for beginners. And the best thing is, if you're good, you're still rewarded. Mirror matches tend to be coin flips in this sort of game. They're not coin flips here, and we'll get to that in a bit. There is another theme deck that came out in the form of Imperial Command, and we will cover that another time, but because I think that deck is a bit more technical, and I'd like a few more games under my belt before I review it. Let's talk about the deck that finally knocked Destruction Fang off the top of the theme deck pile though, and this is Mach Strike. It's absolutely insane. We'll start off with the stars of the deck. That's 3 Gible, 2 Gabite and 2 Garchomp. These are the main beat sticks. Well, Garchomp is really weak to the fairy type, but no one in the theme deck ladder is playing fairies. Now, Royal Blades, look, it might only look like it does 100, but it does 200 if you play Cynthia, and we'll get to that in a bit. So it looks comparatively weak to other main theme deck win conditions, but the lack of real weakness and easy ways to recycle Cynthia, which we'll get to later again, means it's more resilient than other main win conditions. I like this card a lot. You also get a shiny version and a normal version there. We then get 3 copies of Riolu and 1 copy of Lucario. Now, the deck uses Lucario for precognitive aura. You don't really use it for Missile Jab. It requires Garchomp to be in play, but you can search any card in your deck. It's a great ability, but it does take a while to set up, and the conditions are difficult, shall we say. So if you're at the stage where this is a thing, you've already won, to be honest. I've played about, again, 40 games with the deck, and I can't really say this has been a game changer. If you're winning, this just sort of wins more, shall we say. Missile Jab is useful against flyers, though, so be aware of that. We then come on to 2 copies of Hippopotas and 1 copy of Hippowdon. I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. Hippowdon is basically another tank with high output, but again requires a lot of setup. 4 energy to use its Dust Cannon, 3 energy to use Sand Tomb. Having said that, it's a better win condition against decks that are weak to fighting, for example, Destruction Fang. Overall though, I'm not convinced. I like this card, but again, if it becomes Haymaker against Haymaker, Hippowdon will win you the game. So it's there for a reason. We then have 3 copies of Young Goose and 2 copies of Gumshoes. Gumshoes has perhaps the best attack in the deck. It can hit for 100 damage for 2 energy. Identify, it hits for 20, but your opponent reveals their hand, and if you find a Pokemon there, it does 80 more damage. 100 damage for 2 energy is nuts. And to be honest, even if you only hit for 20, you get to see your opponent's hand, and free information is valuable. It's absolutely insane. If you played Magic the Gathering, you've played cards like Gitaxian Probe, Thoughtseize. This is like that, but in a different way. Sure, you don't get to take a card from their hand, but you get to see what they're playing with. And you can use your next turn to sort of prep for that. So, very, very useful. Finally, we have 1 copy of type Null. Think of this really as a 3rd copy of Gumshoes. It's another mid-range Pokemon that can do a lot of damage. Merciless Strike, 2 energy, 30 damage, but does 30 more if your opponent is already damaged. And then Bang is 70 damage for 3. So just be aware of that. Efficient, quite tanky. Treat him as a 3rd Gumshoes, but nothing special. For a basic Pokemon, really, you can't say that you're that surprised. We'll talk about the support Pokemon now. We've got 2 copies of Spiritomb. Help stall your opponent whilst you set up the board and recycle your powerful supporter cards. Terrify is great. A lot of people in theme decks often get stuck with basic Pokemon, so just constantly just hitting for 10, making sure they can't attack. Really good, stalls the game, helps you set up. Lightless World, again, there are 7 supporter cards in your deck, so there aren't that many, so being able to put them from your discard pile into your hand is really good. The last Pokemon we'll cover is Soulrock. It's a support Pokemon again, but again, absolutely insane. Double draw, it costs 1 energy, draw 2 cards. Are you kidding me? Absolutely brilliant, really good. I'm surprised that ability got through R&D. The second one, Solar Heat, you don't really use. There's no stadiums in the deck. You're basically playing this for the double draw. Again, I can't believe this is in the deck. And the 90 health really helps as well. Maybe, maybe bring down the HP if you're going to put in an ability that draws 2 cards for 1 energy. I don't know what they were thinking. Let's talk about the supportive item cards now. We've got 1 copy of Escape Rope, 1 copy of Big Malasada, 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher, and 1 copy of Escape Board. Now, the defensive item cards are few and far between, as you can see, so you need to use these sparingly to get the most out of them. Respect the fact that you're trading your high HP for a lack of healing. Also, about Escape Board, really useful in this deck because except for Garchomp, your damage dealers have very high retreat costs. So these items are invaluable, especially with Escape Rope as well. Remember, only 1 of each in the deck. So a lot of your duels will come down to who can use theirs better, who can get the most value out of them, but aren't afraid to pull the trigger. Don't hold on too long to these items because you will lose the game otherwise. Next, we have the Pokeballs. We've got 2 copies of Nest Ball and 2 copies of Timer Ball. 2 Nest Ball. Well, Nest Ball is as vital as ever, especially if you have an evolution stuck in your hand. Timer Ball, on the other hand, is powerful but unreliable. It's great to maintain the lead, but if you're behind, don't hold your breath. It's less of a win more, though, and more of a win saver. Just don't go praying to RNGesus anytime soon, or you're going to have a bad time. Getting 2 evolutions would be great, but if you get 0, you could be in trouble. So again, don't rely on it. The final item we'll talk about is the Pal Pad. Shuffle 2 supporter cards from your discard pile into your deck. Again, we run 7 supporter cards. That's not a lot, to be honest, but the fact that you can recycle them, we've got Spiritomb and now Pal Pad to recycle them, is great. Unlike Spiritomb, they return to the deck, but unlike Spiritomb again, you don't have to waste an attack and have Spiritomb in play to put them there. So all in all, treat it as a 3rd Spiritomb. Finally, we have the support cards. 2 copies of Professor Kukui, 2 copies of Cynthia, 2 copies of Hao, 1 copy of Looker. All the card draw, basically. Now, Kukui is great for ending the game, getting that last bit of damage through, and Cynthia is awesome for resetting your hand and dealing 200 damage with Garchomp's Royal Blades. Remember, Garchomp's main ability does 100, but 200 if you played a Cynthia that turn. So use the likes of Pal Pad, use the likes of Spiritomb to sort of get that recycling engine going, and you'll be well on your way to victory. Finally, we've got 20 fighting energy, really the only energy required because that's the only type that's declared as a cost to attack with. Spiritomb only requires colourless. Garchomp uses fighting energy, so you don't need to worry about that. Just 20 energy. Now, bear in mind, there is no way to recycle energy in this deck, so you need to be a bit more careful with how you use your energy compared to other theme decks. But that is the deck. Keep an eye out for the trainer challenge and versus ladder videos coming up showing this deck in action. I have about an 80% win rate with this deck on the ladder right now, including multiple wins where my opponent had the advantage. But that is for another time. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more. You can also check us out on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Links in the description below. In the meantime though, I've been JB for Just TCG and I'll see you in the next one.